This happened about 5 days ago. It was over Thanksgiving break. Lauren Boebert, and this story has spiraled out of control since it first started, after reaction after reaction after reaction from a ton of different people. Lauren Boebert said that she was recently in a Capitol elevator with Ilhan Omar when a fretful Capitol police officer ran up to her. Lauren Boebert said, "Well, she doesn't have a backpack, we'll be fine." She then called Ilhan Omar part of the Jihad Squad. Ilhan Omar, of course, being the most high-profile Muslim American politician in the United States, who fled Somalia at the age of 13 to flee war. Let's play the audio quick.
Actually, I have an Ilhan story for you. So, the other night on the House floor was not my first Jihad Squad moment.
By the way, okay, like I feel like I don't have to say this, but saying that Ilhan Omar is part of the Jihad Squad is just terribly racist. I mean, I hope I don't have to explain why, since she does not support terrorism, and in fact, terrorism is a large reason why she had to flee her country of Somalia when she was only the age of 13 as a refugee. So not only is it terribly racist, but it's also stabbing at a particularly vulnerable part of her past.
I was getting into an elevator with one of my staffers, and he and I were leaving the Capitol. We're going back to my office, and we get in the elevator, and I see a Capitol police officer running hurriedly to the elevator. I see fret all over his face, and he's reaching, and I'm like, "What? I can't, the door's shutting. Like, I can't open it. Like, what's happening?" I look to my left, and there she is, Ilhan Omar. Oops. And I said, "Well, she doesn't have a backpack. We should be fine." So we only had one floor to go, and it was like,
Can I just say, by the way, Ilhan Omar fled terrorism, right? While Lauren Boebert supported the man, Donald Trump, who openly called for terrorism. He openly called for terrorism. He said that we need to bomb the families of terrorists to basically install fear, or as other people would call it, terror in the population. He literally called for terror attacks, the bombing of civilians across the Middle East. He said he wanted to target Iranian cultural sites of no strategic importance. And he said he had a list of them made during, shortly after the Soleimani killing, the drone strike against Soleimani. So it's weird for her to say that she's part of the Jihad Squad, or to say, oh, she has a backpack, she's a terrorist, or any of these accusations against Ilhan Omar. Somebody who you would think out of everybody in Congress probably has an ideology most opposed to terrorism, since it affected her actual personal life in a massively negative way, while Lauren Boebert is supporting the people who actively called for terror attacks. I just find that very interesting. It's almost as if there's one trait about Donald Trump that is different about Ilhan Omar. Like, there's one thing that differentiates these two people that makes her more willing to call her a terrorist, or suggest she's a terrorist, or suggest she's bringing bombs to Congress. Who knows? Who knows what it is?
do I say it or not? I looked over, and I said, "Oh, look, the Jihad Squad decided to show up for work today." Don't worry, it's just her staffers on Twitter that talk for her. She's not tough in person. She doesn't, yes. So, there's a little bit of interaction.
Now, the interesting thing about this story is what she's describing here. Like, oh, she was not tough in person, da-da-da-da. She's shadowboxing in the shower right now. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, okay? People, when they take showers, their minds wander. And a lot of people Like, they'll think back to arguments or debates they're gonna have, right, and stuff like that. And they'll be like, and then I'll say this thing, and then I'll tell my boss, no, screw you, and then I'll walk out, everybody clap, and they fantasize. And in the shower, people fantasize quite a lot. What she's doing right now is having, like, a shower fantasization, right? She's doing the TikTok thing, where somebody is like, hey, I am the smart conservative, and I'm the dumb liberal. I am smart and very normal. I am liberal and very deranged and terrible straw man position. Well, I am going to now rebuke that, but she's doing that because the interaction she's describing never happened. Ilhan Omar said it never happened, and Laura Boebert has basically backed down on the idea that this interaction ever happened in the first place. So not only did she just do racist story time, right? While also completely overlooking her own personal record on the issue she's talking about, right? But she completely made the whole story up. It never happened. Never. Anyway, that's what happened. And of course, after this, Boebert eventually, after there was a ton of backlash, Ilhan Omar called them out. If somebody could send me Ilhan Omar's statement on this, I'd appreciate it. I actually lost it while preparing for the story. She says, I apologize to anyone in the Muslim community I offended with my comment about Representative Omar. I have reached out to her office to speak with her directly. There are plenty of policy differences to focus on without this unnecessary distraction. Okay, the first thing is, you talk about policy differences very, very little, right? And you were the person who brought this up. You were the person who created the distraction, and now you're the person trying to sweep the distraction under the rug. Also, I don't know what exactly anyone expected of Lauren Boebert, to be completely honest. And I hate to go back to this, right? But she is most well known for, like, touting her support of Donald Trump. Somebody who publicly called for a banning of Muslims. Now, people like to debate this, right? But it's not really debatable. It's just a fact. If somebody like Fluff could send me the audio quick, I'd appreciate it, where he talks about this. I remember the audio very clearly. He said during a speech on the campaign trail, I am calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims, he just says Muslims here, entering the United States until we can figure out what the hell is going on. Cue applause from his audience. Later, and this is something that Rudy Giuliani admitted on Fox and Friends. This is not a liberal conspiracy theory. He says that when coming up with what was referred to as the Muslim ban, it happened after Donald Trump came to him after that speech, walked up to Rudy and said, think up how we can do a Muslim ban legally. And of course, you can't just write a document saying Muslims banned from America, because we have this tricky little thing, freedom of religion or something. And so that's what we actually got, the slowly watering down of the Muslim ban. The original version was rejected by the courts. The second version, they added like Venezuela, North Korea, and other nations. Anyway. So this was Representative Lauren Boebert's apology. It really means nothing, because this is a behavior that she's engaged in for a very, very long time. I mean, if she magically just completely stops her behavior, stops using the terms like jihad squad, stops trying to tie Ilhan Omar to Al-Qaeda frivolously, and stops like making jokes about her being a terrorist or trying to tie her to terrorism or Sharia law or any of that, well, we'll see what follows this. But I don't exactly have high hopes for one of the most far-right members of Congress. Anyway. But Donald Trump decided to release a statement on this. And that's why I was talking about Donald Trump. Oh, yep, here it is, by the way.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
Anyway, that man released a statement on this. Now, I don't know if many of you might be surprised by this, but the statement he released, which he released today, by the way, so this is breaking news. was not exactly conciliatory towards Ilhan Omar. And in fact, instead of apologizing or even just defending Lauren Boebert, he goes out, the man who, of course, caused for Muslims to be banned from the United States, and he starts peddling other conspiracy theories. One famously perpetuated by Jacob Wool and has been disproven well before he stated this here. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar should apologize for marrying her brother. This is a Jacob Wool Project Veritas conspiracy theory that's been disproven time and time again. There's no evidence that she married her brother to get into the United States. Committed large-scale immigration and election fraud. This is connected in large part to Project Veritas. Not exactly a reputable news source, but again, has been disproven time and time again, peddling long disputed conspiracy theories, wishing death to Israel. She, as far as I remember, has not wished death to Israel. The things that I remember when it comes to Ilhan Omar, it was the all about the Benjamin comment and the hypnosis thing. Those two things, right? Which you can talk about those statements. I don't remember her wishing death to Israel. Am I just misremembering? Am I misremembering? If that is the thing that happened, somebody please tell me, right? If I'm just completely forgetting that. In fact, let me look it up quick, just to be double sure. Nope. Okay. Wonderful. So she hasn't. It's just a lie. Who would have thought? And for essentially abandoning, this is the most interesting one out of all of it, okay? This is the one that actually perplexed me the most. And for essentially abandoning her former country, which doesn't even have a government. Let me say that again. And for essentially abandoning her former country, which doesn't even have a government. Ilhan Omar was a 13-year-old little girl in a war zone who had to hide from explosions and artillery fire and battles. She was a 13-year-old little girl. What the fuck was she supposed to do? I find it a little hard to believe that the real deciding factor in Somalia's woes was that a 13-year-old little girl with no combat experience, no governmental experience, and no idea how to fix a fractured country, who should be more interested in like learning about literature and like, I don't know, jump rope. How she was supposed to be the person to put Somalia back together again when she was a 13-year-old little girl scared of the sounds of war. I really don't understand it. I would really like to hear which 13-year-old, period, not even just her, would be the person that could put a country back together again in the midst of a civil war. Which 13-year-old during the Yugoslav conflicts put the war back together again? Which 13-year-old during the Russian Civil War put the country back together again? Or during our own American Civil War? I don't know, maybe he saw enough Civil War movies, remembers the Little Drummer Boys, and thought maybe she would be like a drummer for one of the sides or something. I have no clue how he came to the conclusion that she abandoned her former country as a 13-year-old girl, somebody who doesn't even have control of their own life. She is a minor. Right? It is her parents, her guardians, that actually has control over. She can't even control even if she wanted to be home and be the 13-year-old super soldier and start a child army, apparently, to put the country back together again. Even if she wanted to do that, she couldn't. So I do not know how she abandoned her former country, which doesn't even have a government. Like she was going to be the decided fate. Yeah, she was going to be the Joan of Arc at 13. Brilliant. So that's the statement from the former president of the United States, mind you. I think he means as an adult in a position of power, she essentially ignores the country. How? How does she ignore the country? I can tell you, Donald Trump's drones certainly did not ignore Somalia. Anyway. She abandoned her former country, which doesn't even have a government. Is she suggesting that she's supposed to go back to Somalia? That's where she really belongs? Really, there's no way to read this that makes it better, right? Either he's saying that a 13-year-old girl was supposed to not flee the country and she should have stayed there at the age of 13 in a war zone, right? Or that now she doesn't belong in the United States and that she needs to go back to Somalia, right? Which is just another form of race. Like, no matter what, this is just racist. Anyway, of course, this was not the only person to lash out at the idea that Lauren Boebert, shouldn't be racist. Marjorie Taylor Greene came out. Democrats want us censored, shut down, and imprisoned. I don't know where the shutdown and imprisoned came from. I do not know of anyone trying to put Lauren Boebert in prison. Never apologize to Islamic terrorist sympathizers, communists, or those who fund murder with our tax dollars. Now, what's interesting here is that Ilhan Omar and her associates is not only an Islamic terrorist sympathizer, but also a communist. Now, if anybody has studied the history of the United States, of the Middle East, the communists and the Islamic terrorist sympathize, or whatever I guess you could call the Islamic fundamentalists, they've never really been on the same side, so to speak. The Afghan Civil War probably is a great example of that, where the Mujahideen fought against the communist dictatorship of Afghanistan and its Soviet backers for a very long time until the government collapsed. They were not exactly on the same side of things, and communists across the Middle East have historically not been a huge fan of Islamic fundamentalists. So I don't know how she is, on one hand, an Islamic terrorist sympathizer, right? But also a communist who believes there is no God and that women are equal. And I don't know how she's both. Amazing. Truly. And those who want to fund murder with their tax dollars. Be clear, this is Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's a huge supporter of Donald Trump, who escalated the drone war and called for the bombing of civilians. Just throwing it out there. Ilhan Omar and the Jihad Squad, so she's doubling down on the rhetoric, all three are undeserving of an apology. Classy as always. And she doubled down later. Doubled down. Continued. Now this thread is very interesting. I'm very excited about this thread. Let's go through it. If Democrats move against Lauren Boebert, by the way, I do think Democrats should move against Lauren Boebert, okay? When you start insinuating that the other people in Congress are terrorists, right? Like this person is going to go bomb Congress and they're all terrorist sympathizers. What is that going to do, right? Let's say you legitimately believe that somebody in Congress is a terrorist and they're working to destroy America and turn it into, I don't know, communist Sharia atheist state. Like, it's fantasy, right? It's all fantasy land, so entertain us for a moment. If you believe that, the more you buy into it, certain will say terrible and disgusting actions towards that politician of a violent nature become less unreasonable and become reasonable. Because if somebody is legitimately trying to destroy the United States, just like if somebody was legitimately trying to steal an election and had stolen an election, then violence can become a suitable answer, as we saw on January 6th. So the more you suggest your colleague is a terrorist, unfounded, with no basis in reality, the more violence against them becomes perfectly reasonable. Now, of course, Lauren Boebert, Taylor Greene, the Jewish space laser woman, would never directly say, go hurt this politician, go kill this politician. Of course, they'd be stripped of everything if that was the case. But the more you demonize someone to literally make them the equivalent of Satan politically, the easier it is to justify violence. Definitely if you suggest that they themselves are engaging or supporting violence through support of terrorism, which has a bloody history in this country all back to 9/11 and even before that. Siren Songs, thanks for the tier 1. Let me continue. If Democrats move against Lauren Boebert, who apologized, they'll only help Lauren and reveal their true nature. Ilhan committed immigration fraud by repulsively marrying her brother. This is a baseless conspiracy theory. It's not true, and it has no basis in reality. Reveres Al-Qaeda. There's no evidence that she reveres Al-Qaeda. And refers to 9/11 Islamic terror attack as some people did something. Can I just say, it's not that difficult to see that this statement, which has been thrown around a million times, is clip chimping. Maybe it's because I'm a streamer and I'm used to being clip chimped, and it happened to be very recently that I was clip chimped and people tried to get me in trouble for that clip chimping. But it's when you post like 4 words out of like paragraphs, it's super easy to see it. Can we just get the full state? 1 second. I'll get it myself. 9/11 Ilhan. Full statement. Let's read the full statement. I wonder if we got video of it. Representative Omar's remark in context. Wow,
Freshman Democratic Congress of Congress.
okay, we get it. I just want it. I just want the statement in context. Okay.
Opportunity to make the case for Muslim activism.
Here's the truth. Far too long, we have lived with the discomfort of being a second-class citizen. And frankly, I'm tired of it. And every single Muslim in this country should be tired of it. CARE was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties. So you can't just say that today someone is looking at me strange, that I am going to try to make myself look pleasant. You have to say, this person is looking at me strange. I am not comfortable with it. I am going to go talk to them and ask them why. Because that is a right you have.
Well, she misstates it.
So, the thing that gets me about this is when you listen to the context of it, which of course Taylor Greene does not put in there for any reason. She doesn't want to, right? She's not talking about downplaying 9/11. She's not talking about, hey, there's nothing wrong, like who cares, like a few people did a thing or whatever. She's specifically making a speech about, hey, just because some other individuals did this terror attack does not mean that it's okay to treat Muslims in disgust, treat them like they're not deserving of respect, which is a completely true statement. I can't just say because Timothy McVeigh did this bombing, right? Now we can all like say, like, look at every white man and like view them like a terrorist. That'd be ridiculous, right? But for some reason, societally, post 9/11, that's what a lot of Americans did towards Muslim Americans. And not only that, but unconstitutional monitoring of Muslim religious services in New York City was the norm. Not to mention the huge spike in hate crimes and the way we viewed Muslims taking an extremely negative slant. It is perfectly fine for her to call that out. Perfectly fine. They're trying to, as in Taylor Greene and the far right, trying to take that statement and try to display it as if she is saying this to downplay terrorism, Even though, if there's anyone in Congress that understands the full effect of terrorism, it's somebody who had to flee a country at the age of 13 due to it, when she's trying to talk about how Muslim Americans should be treated with respect and they should not be discriminated against. So I hate every time somebody brings this stuff up and they try to take this stuff out of context. I hate it every time. Anyway. Oh boy, what did our favorite person ridiculous? Oh, we already talked about this. Anyway, back to where we were. Speaker Pelosi has already proven that she uses her position of power to attack her enemies. The Russian collusion investigation led by top lawyer Representative Adam Schiff has already been proven to be a real big lie. Wait, there was like over a dozen indictments. How can you just say it was a lie when people were like taken away in handcuffs? Usually if something's a big lie that you don't get like over a dozen indictments, well, whatever. Instead, Pelosi is on her last Destroy America stint in power. She's still abusing her speakership with another fake committee just to spread more propaganda and lies against Republicans about J6. Okay. By the way, we're going to talk about this later. This is unrelated to this, but since it brought up, the January 6th organizers used burner phones to communicate with the White House, and they were specifically instructed to buy these burner phones with cash and then dispose of them. Just, stuff that we don't need to look into at all, right? We're not saying anybody's guilty of anything, but we don't need to look into that at all. That's not suspicious or anything that we need to look into. We don't need to look into the fact that Mo Brooks was wearing body armor during his January 6th speech, Representative Mo Brooks. That's not something of any importance. That doesn't deserve an investigation at all. No, doesn't deserve an investigation of the slightest. Says the person totally not guilty or nervous about their possible involvement or the involvement of the people they support. Not involved at all? Who knows? And as laughable, Schiff is on the witch hunt too. The committee of clowns. Pelosi's defense of Eric Swalwell is what... Listen, okay, can we just... Look all over the board she's going here. Lauren Boebert, Ilhan Omar, Speaker Pelosi, now it's Russia collusion, then it's J6, now we're on to Eric Swalwell, and they're going to talk about Fang Fang and the Chinese Communist spy. All of it, if you look through the rest of this thread, it's just going all over. Now look at this one, China First, Hunter Biden. Like, none of this has to do with Lauren Boebert's statement. Literally none of it. What does Hunter Biden have to do with Lauren Boebert saying that Ilhan Omar is part of the jihad squad and don't worry, she doesn't have a book bag, so she's not going to bomb the Capitol? What does Hunter Biden or Pelosi and Eric Swalwell and Fang Fang or J6 or the Russia investigate, what does any of this have to do with it? Literally nothing. It's just her, of course, just trying to distract you, right? Here's a great example. Earlier today, when I was talking about, and I mentioned Bill Clinton in my story. It's probably going to go up on YouTube soon. I mentioned, hey, look, Donald Trump, we now know, was on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. And the first thing somebody just jumped out of my chat to do was, well, Bill Clinton. I was like, whoa, man. All I said was Trump was on the plane. I don't know why you're chumping out with Bill Clinton 27 times the island, what all this is. I do not know what all this is. At least that was more related. But the reason it was being brought up is because we don't really want to talk about Donald Trump and his ties to Jeffrey Epstein and him saying that Jeffrey Epstein, I've known him for 15 years. He's a great person, amazing social life, and he loves his women on the younger side. And let me take a ride on the Pedo Express, right? I was just talking about the facts of an ongoing trial. But I got that response. Why? Because they wanted to obfuscate. They didn't want us to look at that and actually ask the questions that would come up once you learned that Donald Trump was on the pedo plane. Anyway. This story was a mess. The reaction to what was just openly racist comments should not be surprising, considering for the last 4 to 5 years, 6 years really, the far right have been playing defense to Donald Trump's comments about Muslim Americans and Muslims in general. I shouldn't be that surprised that Boebert might face basically zero consequences for what she said.